Right, travel issues of a different nature caused by humans of a few years ago. Just Stop Oil I'm talking about. You may remember their protests. Well, the Just Stop Oil founder has been sentenced to 5 years in jail after being found guilty of conspiring to disrupt the M25. Roger Hallam's his name. His sentence is the longest ever for non-violent protests and is a result of new laws designed to crack down on public disruption. Let's talk now to Just Stop Oil spokesman Adrian Johnson. Your reaction to that sentence, and it wasn't him alone, others sentenced to 4 years.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on. I'll certainly come to the sentencing in just a moment. Before I do that, the very best way that I can think of this morning to summarise the seriousness and the urgency of the situation that we are all in is to go to Andy Weir's 2011 novel, The Martian, which opens with these famous lines. We're pretty much effed. Okay, he uses the full word there. We're pretty much effed. That's my considered opinion, effed. And he says that because he considers the situation that he's in. He quickly recognises that it's serious and urgent. And he works hard, the character in this book, to make sure that he doesn't stay effed. And that's why the people took
Adrian,
the action that they
listen, we don't have a huge amount of time. And you know, I'm not sure many people are familiar with the book, but we get the gist. You're saying it's a climate emergency. We know you're saying that. And that then requires extreme actions, such as those that Just Stop Oil has been carrying out over the last few years. But, you know, to counter that, people say, well, OK, we understand your message and your sense of urgency. Many of us agree with it, of course, but your methods are entirely wrong. Look what happened, let's say, just on that protest that Roger Hallam and others have been jailed for. Ambulances stopped for hours, hospital appointments missed, school exams missed. I mean, it takes a disproportionate toll on people.
But that's just it, isn't it? We don't really understand that we are effed. And we don't see that is the considered opinion of experts. When we do that, then taking action that was taken in 2022 makes perfect sense. And it was that reality, it was that truth that the defendants tried and worked really hard to get into the courtroom over the trial that's happened. They were shut down. They were not allowed to tell the whole truth. They wanted to bring in expert scientific witnesses. They wanted documents presented to the jury. That was prevented. They wanted to be allowed to make uninterrupted statements. They were not allowed to. The judge repeatedly sent the jury out and then dragged the defendants off to jail.
Okay, so what do you want to see?
Truth was not.
What do you want to see happen? Do you want the Attorney General, Richard Hermer, to intervene? Do you want to see Labour repeal that legislation? It was toughened up legislation, wasn't it, that the last government introduced in the policing bill? And of course, Labour in opposition voted against it.
Let's remember that legislation was brought in with the advice and the steering of the oil lobby. Okay, it was the fossil fuel industry that guided our government to bring in that legislation. So yes, of course, we need it to be repealed. You know, yesterday the Special Rapporteur for Environmental Defenders, so Michel Force from the United Nations, he commented that yesterday marked a dark day for peaceful environmental protest, the protection of environmental defenders, and indeed anyone concerned with the exercise of their fundamental freedoms.
So are you pressuring?
In the United Kingdom.
Are you pressuring, as perhaps you should do, in terms of peaceful protests and the way that laws are changed in the United Kingdom, pressuring this government? We heard Keir Starmer just yesterday saying that the new government stands four square by its respect for human rights, and bearing in mind what the UN rapporteur has said, are you pressuring them to try to change that legislation?
Of course, that would be an appropriate response to yesterday's sentencing and also the court case that took place. Okay. But we're also calling on the government to sign a fossil fuel treaty.
Right.
So they need to work with other nations to end fossil fuels by 2030.
Okay.
And
Mr.
to help
Johnson,
other nations to do the same.
I'm sorry we are out of time. Very good of you to join us. Adrian Johnson from Just Stop Oil.